And now we're going to bring in our last guest for this segment, because we're going to have a small break and then we're going to come back at like 11, but and that's Central Time. Julie Cohen is a genetic counselor out of the Kennedy Kruger Medical Center. And she's going to talk a little bit to us about genetic counsel, being a genetic counselor. Hello, Julie. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. It's nice to see yet another happy, smiling face this morning. You know, just when I think, man, I'm getting a little tired, and then I see energy on the other side. It does help. It does help.
Oh, good.
So,
I've had my coffee.
pass one here. No. Okay. So, genetic counselor. Tell us a little bit about what that is for those that don't know.
Yes. So a lot of people don't know what genetic counselors do or who we are, or, do we do gene therapy or do we do cloning? No. So genetic counselors are health professionals, master's level health professionals with specialized training in clinical genetics and counseling. And our job is to work as part of the medical team for individuals. So in this case with FSHD, so helping with understanding genetic test results, understanding the implications of an FSHD diagnosis for the individual as well as for their family member, things like that.
So for instance, so I have FSHD. I went and got the DNA test because my neurologist said you should get a DNA test, blah, 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 to know if it's FSHD 1 or 2. So if I get that like recommendation, I go through that process to get it done. Is that probably the moment I should find a genetic counselor?
That would be a good time, but also could be before or could be after. So we do a lot related to genetic testing, but it's not solely surrounding genetic testing.
Okay.
So anybody with a known or suspected diagnosis of FSHD or any other genetic condition for that matter could benefit from talking with a genetic counselor to understand more about the inheritance pattern of that condition. Is it something that other family members could be affected with? How do you talk to your relatives about your condition? For individuals who have children or are thinking about having kids in the future, knowing, is this something that could be passed on? What kind of options are there if you want to take steps to not pass the condition on?
Yeah, that's when you talked about passing it on to your kids, that was one of the leading questions for my wife when I was diagnosed. Then she immediately went, "Wait, this is genetic?" Her eyes got as big as saucers. Like, we have 2 boys, and that was one of her immediate questions. And she just happened to beat me to it. That's just the mother over the father instinct, I think.
Yeah.
So, is that one of the most common questions you get? Is the coping or the man? To me, it's like a laundry list of questions within a question. You have, okay, could this get passed on? What are the percentages? And if it happens, then what? And when should my child get genetically tested, if they should, etc. So can you kind of walk down that road a little?
Yeah, that's it's more than one issue. It's many issues wrapped into one, but it's a big topic of conversation I have with individuals with FSHD because it is an inherited condition. Often it's inherited from a parent. Sometimes the genetic change happens new in an individual, but a person like you with FSHD can still pass it on no matter what, even if your parents don't also have it. Right. And that's a real sensitive and emotional issue. How do you talk to your relatives about this condition? How do you talk to your children? A lot of people aren't diagnosed until they're adults and they already have kids. And there's a lot of emotions that come around it. Worry about their children. Did they get that coin toss, flip of the coin where they did inherit FSHD? Maybe they didn't. Hopefully they didn't. When should they be tested? When do you talk about it with them? Lots of feelings there. And then, your partner also has those sorts of feelings as well.
Have you come across any, topic of conversation in regards to that when do you get your child tested? Like, for instance,
yes.
I'll use myself, and that's, the doctor almost said, unless you start seeing signs in your child, don't get them tested. It was really like, almost like they'll be blackballed kind of a thing with insurance and all these other things. Is that
So
properly
for
done?
a condition like Yeah, so for a condition like FSHD, where currently we don't have any treatments that would prevent symptoms from happening down the road, maybe one day we will have a preventative treatment, but right now we don't have a preventative treatment. So for a child who doesn't have any symptoms and who is too young to make a decision for themselves, we generally say, let's not do genetic testing for them. Let's wait until the child's a little bit older, maybe in the teenage years, to start having the conversation with them, and then they can decide when and if they want to find out their status. Because if we were to test a young child, let's say we were to find out the child does have the FSHD gene change, we wouldn't do anything different in their medical care, and we also wouldn't really be able to predict when or what or if any symptoms they would develop. Each family is unique, so I always have an individualized discussion with my patients about this, and there could be some situations where the benefits of testing children may make sense, but our general recommendation is to wait until the child is a bit older so they can understand and make a decision for themselves or participate in that decision making.
That's great advice. I like that, how they kind of own a little bit of the decision. I think that's very wise. I didn't even think of it that way. As a dad, it's just everyone get behind me, and I'll
Right.
just shield you all. And so yeah, I can see that being a massive benefit. So it's
Yeah.
good that I'm talking with the genetic.
Yeah, we don't necessarily recommend making it a secret,
Yeah.
that it's something that you withhold from the child until they turn 18, because nothing magical happens at 18.
Right.
And you don't want it to be a family secret, because that can make it seem scarier than it maybe really is. So starting to introduce the information as the child gets older in an age appropriate way, which is of course going to be different for every child, but just kind of start
Right.
having those discussions, and then and your parents, your child best, and then you can guide them on getting them to see a genetic counselor, to talk to a doctor who is familiar with FSHD, and decide on a time when they think it's right for them to learn their status.
And how about for the parents to be?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's a couple just starting out and they're discussing family. Do we grow this family beyond the two of us, into more? So if so, and one has FSHD, how does that conversation, you know, go a little bit? Or what are the maybe common questions is a better way to ask you, Julie?
Yeah. So for a person with FSHD and their partner who want to become parents but don't yet have children, the decision of whether and how to do that is also a really complicated and really personal one. There are some reproductive options available. In some situations, there's the ability to do in vitro fertilization and actually do genetic testing of the embryos before a pregnancy even begins, in order
Okay.
to identify embryos that don't have the FSHD genetic change. So that's not an option for everybody. The genetics is a little bit complicated, but that is possible in many cases. There's also testing that can be done once a person is already pregnant. So at this point, we don't have those miracle drugs to fix it. And some couples decide to pursue adoption or using a donor egg or sperm. And some couples decide, after thinking all of this through, that they are going to go about having their family as they would otherwise. And understanding the risk and just preparing for whatever comes. So, and all of those are equally acceptable options. Each couple is going to make a decision that's right for them, and a genetic counselor can help in that decision making process. And if couples are really struggling with it after talking to a genetic counselor, I also sometimes recommend talking to a family therapist, kind of for longer term counseling, because genetic counselors, although we are trained counselors, we provide more kind of short-term focused counseling around the medical diagnosis and the genetic diagnosis. Longer term, like weekly or monthly therapy sessions, that's not something that a genetic counselor would typically do.
Yeah, you definitely are walking that fine line between, you're talking about something physical, but yet you are dealing with the emotional as well, which it sounds like that's kind of tough waters to navigate. It kind of leaves me where I'm like trying to figure out then, because I did not know of a genetic counselor when I was diagnosed. I think I would have really benefited from it for sure. So how can people find one, if they're, at that stage, or is it ever too late? Even for me, should I still be trying to find one?
I don't think it's ever too late. Of course, I'm biased as a genetic counselor. Genetic counselors, there's about 5,000 genetic counselors in the United States. There is a really handy website to find a genetic counselor. It's called findageneticcounselor.com. It's a website for the National Society of Genetic Counselors, and you can search on that website. You want to look for a genetic counselor who, there's various specialties. There's like cancer genetic counselors, prenatal. So you'd probably want to talk to somebody who specializes in neurology or adult genetics. You could also ask your FSHD doctor if there's a genetic counselor who they work with or refer to. There are as well a number of telegenetic services, so you can speak with a genetic counselor by video, similar to we're doing now. So that has increased access, because there's, in some areas of the country, there's really not a lot of genetic counselors, and genetic counselors may not be specifically familiar with FSHD.
So you're saying that would you find then that a genetic counselor is kind of in high demand because there's not enough?
Yes, I have found that, but with things like telegenetics, that is increasing access to genetic services. So I think nowadays it is easier to access a genetic counselor, even if there's not one in your town or at the hospital where you go.
How about your involvement then with the FSHD Society? The impact that has on your work, making that kind of connection, specifically with our community. And then kind of like, as you see, I'm trying to direct it to the Giving Tuesday thing, and the importance then of, kind of having that group be at the ready to help, so we can direct maybe people even to your direction.
Yeah, please do. Yes, because there's not a lot of, real specialized genetic counselors for FSHD in the country. And not really on purpose, I've come to develop this relationship with FSH Society. So I work at Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore, and I started there just over 11 years ago. One of my roles there is with the Center for Genetic Muscle Disorders. And when I started, I did not know how to pronounce FSHD. So I have to say I didn't seek out this particular specialty, but through working with the fantastic physicians and other team members there, FSHD has taken a special place in my heart. It's a rare condition, but it's also one of, I'm surprised it is one of the most common muscular dystrophies, particularly among adults, but so many people don't know about it, and it can be hard to find information. And I think the FSHD Society has done a remarkable job of reaching patients and families, of partnering with industry and with technology and with research all across the world to really advance research into FSHD. And I'm sure you're going to have people on today who are talking about that, but it's really, really exciting, just the advances that have been made. And I've even seen that just in my 10 plus years in this field, how we know more even just about the genetic cause of FSH. When I started, we didn't know what the gene for FSHD type 2 was. It was still a mystery then, and now we know, and it's really, it's only been a 10-year span. Yeah. So things with more targeted therapeutics, with gene therapies, those are coming down the pike. But we need to increase awareness and education about this condition, both in the medical and science community, as well as in the broader public and among patients.
Yeah, it's you're right. It's not something that people just know. I mean, when I say to people, I have muscular dystrophy, I think immediately they think of the Jerry Lewis telethon and those kind of things, at least the generation I'm in and older. And then they kind of always give me the puppy dog head tilt and look at me up and down like, what do you mean you have that? Like you seem okay. Yeah. And so to kind of help cope, I mean, your job and what you do to me is a massive key component. So it almost like bothers me that like even my own doctor didn't know, maybe we should see a genetic counselor in this. Do you find that is kind of a little wall yet to break through? So,
I think so. Yes.
Counselor.
Yeah. And I think access to genetic testing and getting to a correct diagnosis. And it's probably even harder for individuals who have less obvious symptoms and maybe go undiagnosed for a long time. I know the FSHD Society is starting to think about ways to increase access to genetic services and diagnosis. The pandemic, of course, has thrown a wrench in that as well as everything. But but hopefully that will continue. And if anybody is needing help finding a genetic counselor or accessing genetic testing related to FSHD, they should definitely go to the FSHD Society, and often those inquiries get directed to me. And during this pandemic period, I have been able to myself provide more telehealth services, which has been nice. So being able to talk to people, provide care to people all across the country, even without traveling to Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is nice. I mean, virtually, I guess,
Yeah.
Julie, this is not the first time we've talked. So, this is, we might have a counselor patient relationship started here live on air for everybody to
Love
witness.
it. Okay.
So
I don't know if HIPAA would
to,
agree, but yeah.
Yeah, right. They probably would not. But I've signed the waiver. I'm good.
Oh,
so,
good. Okay.
But I do appreciate your time here today, and the impact that you've made in our community is phenomenal. And that just goes to show why we need the support that we need and the community we need, and days like this for the Giving Tuesday, and to have you be one of our warriors fighting with us and helping us is really key, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm delighted to be a part of this. FSHD Society is doing awesome things. Even just the website is so beautiful with easily understandable information. And I've always found all of the leadership with FSHD Society responding quickly to inquiries. And so it's just a great resource. And I send all of my patients and families to the website and to you guys. So yes, Giving Tuesday, this is an important and worthy cause to donate to.
Thanks, Julie. We'll talk to you, I'm sure, in the future again. And
yeah.
You have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye. And bye, everybody out there listening.
That is Julie Cohen. She's the genetic counselor for Kennedy Kruger Muscular Center. Huge help, huge tool to use in your toolbox, folks. I mean, I probably should have, excuse me, I should have taken advantage of that sooner. And I guess it's not too late, and it's not for you either. It's kind of wrapping up here in our first little segment. I say little segment because the next one's going to be a lot longer, and that's okay. That's why we need a little bit of a break, and we're going to take about a 20-ish minute break when this is all said and done here, and come back at the top of the hour. That's 11 a.m. here Central. My brain is not fully functioning enough to give you the math of all the other time zones, so yeah, I'll have to rely on you all to do that. So basically, though, top of the hour, we'll be back. But before we go, I wanted to give that special thank yous here to Mark Stone and Scott Harper and John Hogan and Robert Gould, Jun Kinoshita, Chris Carino, Fran Sevendrup, and then Julie Cohen, who joined us in the first segment. Our sponsors have helped bring all those guests to you. Avidity Biosciences, visit them at aviditybiosciences.com, and Dyne Therapeutics. You can visit their site, dyne-tx.com. Those are our phenomenal sponsors. We have a big match out there, $150,000. That's right. You heard me right. $150,000. Mark Stone mentioned that very first thing this morning. So if you were not awake enough to quick hit on Facebook and watch that, I think the replay will be available, but we're going to come back more at the top of the hour. But he talked about that. He talked about this fourth quarter push, and we had some great words of wisdom from every single guest we had on in this first segment. And it is huge, huge impact that they're making in our lives, not just today, but the days prior and the days coming. So you can also make an impact. FSHD Society's Facebook page has a button called Donate. All you have to do is click that, put in the amount. If it's $1, great. If it's more, great. Do what you can. I know it's tough times, but FSHD doesn't stop. COVID-19, it might lead the way in the news, but FSHD is still there, and it's been there. And when hopefully COVID-19 is wiped off the planet, FSHD is still going to be there. And we need that help to kind of escort that off the planet as well. So you need to give, you need to help. Let your friends know, spread it through the channels of your social media. Heck, just pick up the phone old school wise and let them know this is Giving Tuesday, and they can help the FSHD Society, which in turn helps our community, which in turn helps you. Text FSHD to 243-725. And so we'll take our little break, and when we come back, we will bring you more guests all in store. This has been the FSHD Society radio show.